This is easily the fastest I've ever made a sequel to a video. See, for today I actually had a hell of a boss focus episode, all done and dusted, ready to go out, but then on Wednesday when I put out the bonus episode of Pokemon as Dragons, lots of people seemed really excited about getting a sequel to that. I got tons of great suggestions for what Pokemon I could use in a sequel. I had a ton of fun making that, so I thought we can push the hell of a boss episode to Monday and fast track a sequel to Pokemon as Dragons. So let's get into it, shall we? Let's go!
Hit like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but either way, enjoy the show. In the seas near Korea and Japan, there once resided a species of dragon now thought to be hunted to extinction. Though, if it does still exist, the remaining members of its species may be far more dangerous than the previously documented ones. This dragon is, or was, called the Goliath lobstagon, and is a sea dragon that heavily resembles lobsters. Its body is similar in shape to that of a wyvern, though it couldn't be classified as such, as it has 4 small sets of additional arms spawning from its torso, and wyverns are dragons with 2 wings, 2 legs, and no arms. There are 2 primary reasons these creatures have either become very rare or extinct entirely. One is that their armor is heavily sought after for samurai. For a time, it was a common trial for some Japanese warriors to hunt a Goliath lobstagon and forge their armor from its hide after slaying it. I actually have a set of this armor myself, though I did not slay a lobstagon as I have not seen one in person and wouldn't attempt to kill one if I did. An armor crafting ally of mine acquired the hide from a relative of hers in South Korea and was willing to forge me an armor from it, and I must say it is quite a beautiful piece of armor. The other reason the lobstagons were hunted to potential extinction is that they are apparently absolutely delicious. Asian royals discovered this hundreds of years ago, and the creature became a delicacy. The flesh of the Goliath lobstagon, paired with melted butter, is allegedly so delicious that no person who's ever consumed it has been able to resist eating more. Despite its name possessing the word Goliath, these dragons are not particularly large by dragon standards, commonly reaching 30 feet in length from head to tail's end. But these statistics only refer to ones seen above water. Tales have been told that while Goliath lobstagons are no longer sighted by explorers of the Asian seas, that many of them do still live in the depths of the ocean, as they can breathe underwater and their biology suggests they could survive in even the deepest seas. If this is the case, those members of this species may grow that much larger, as in some species, creatures that live close to the bottom of the ocean have been known to grow far larger than their more elevated dwelling companions. Goliath lobstagons can be quite dangerous, as they eventually came to recognize humans as a significant threat, but admittedly I'd still love a chance to see one myself in the flesh, as if the armor I possess forged from one is any sign, these creatures are truly magnificent to behold. Now, I saw a few different suggestions for Golisopod in the comment section of the last video, and I knew I wanted to use it. I've never drawn Golisopod before as anything, and I think it's such an awesome looking Pokemon, and I knew I wanted to do something very lobstery looking because it's got that sort of look. It's not actually based off lobsters, but, you know, I wanted to go with that anyway. And I was actually taking some inspiration for how I textured this from my Scizor SCP, because that has a very lobstery look. They're both bug Pokemon, but this one being water, I also wanted to make it a little bit shinier. And overall, I'm very pleased with how this came together. I kind of wish I'd made the tail end a little bit bigger, but it just wasn't really fitting in the piece, and I didn't want to shrink the rest of the dragon anymore. But that's really just a tiny nitpick. I love how this turned out, and I hope you all like it as well. The next dragon is one that may not even be worth speaking of, as everyone has heard tales of these creatures. They were once the most common species of dragon in this world. They have many of the common traits associated with dragons. They could breathe fire, fly, had scaly hides. One of the less common traits, however, was a flame that constantly spurted forth from the tips of these dragons' tails, and a way to weaken them was to douse this in water or find some other way to put it out. Of course, attempting to do so would ignite these creatures' wrath. These dragons were called the charring sky lizards, named even prior to the word dragon becoming commonplace. They were known to be very hot-tempered, but the right dragon tamer could train one to fight alongside them. There are even great tales told of warriors who trained this specific breed of dragon to fight alongside them in dragon tamer tournaments that were enacted in this world near 1,000 years ago. Warriors would seek out what they believed to be the greatest dragon in the lands, train it, then ride those dragons in competition against other tamers to see who the greatest dragon and trainer pairing was each year. I heard tales of these tournaments as a child and thought them to be nothing but legend, as they suggested a time when humans and dragons lived in relative harmony, and many of the legends were full of magic that I long thought to be an impossibility. Knowing all I know now, however, about how much magic there truly is in this world, it excites me to think that these tournaments truly did occur. One legend even told of a warrior who managed to unlock hidden potential within his sky lizard partner, using a set of enchanted stones he'd acquired from a sorcerer. Holding one of these gems while riding his dragon would allow the creature to grow larger, sprout extra horns, as well as significantly increase its speed and the intensity of its flames. The other of the stones would even completely change the dragon's color and make it far more vicious of a fighter. Not long after this, other warriors and dragon tamers allegedly went to sorcerers to try and acquire enchanted stones to aid their own dragon ally partners. Some were successful and others were not. Though I now wonder, what happened to these stones? What dragons that still exist could be elevated by them? And could more of these stones be made today? So many story ideas are jumping to mind with how I could work in Mega Evolution kind of stuff, and lots of people in the comment section of the last video asked that I do something with Mega Evolutions, and even more people asked that I use Charizard for this series, which I debated a little bit because, you know, even though Charizard isn't technically a dragon Pokemon, Charizard is a dragon. So it seemed like a kinda silly one to use for this series, but at the same time, it kind of felt like a no-brainer as well, and I'm so glad I used it. Pairing the Mega Evolution suggestions with the Charizard one, I went with Mega Charizard Y. And admittedly, I actually like Mega Charizard X a little bit better, but I was thinking about it, and technically I have used Mega Charizard X on the channel before, back in the days of the Pokemon as Superheroes series, which is still set to get a reboot when the channel hits 500,000 subscribers. But I was like, okay, I'll use Mega Charizard Y. It looks a bit more like regular Charizard anyway, and I am so glad I did. I spent a long time trying to figure out the pose for this one. It ended up making the drawing time of this one take about 4.5 hours, but I would say well worth it. I think this competes with the Tyranitar from the last episode for the best Pokemon dragon I've drawn, but there's a lot of potential in this series, so let's see where this goes. And let's take a look at the finished drawing.
Now I'm about to advertise something that technically I shouldn't be advertising yet, but I've just put out a new ink bundle on my Teespring store. It's the biggest one I've ever made, once again, 150 inks for $15 American, and the reason that I shouldn't be advertising it yet is because I've messed with the timeline a little bit here. The Hell of a Boss episode was supposed to come out today, and the 4 drawings from that episode, those inks are in the ink bundle. So if you get the ink bundle before Monday's episode comes out, you're going to be getting some slight spoilers about what I'm drawing in that episode, but, you know, you won't actually get to see them colored yet because it's an ink bundle. It's meant for you to color the stuff in it. So spoiler warning for anyone that buys it before Monday. As well, all the art from this episode is up as posters on my Teespring store too. I'll link those somewhere below this video. But for now, more Pokemon dragons.
The next dragon I've recently read about is another variation of a species I was already familiar with. The albino Zoro wyvern was said in legend to come about as a result of a more common Zoro wyvern being killed and regenerated to life with a more vengeful and hateful nature. They were said to have an undying despise for every living thing in the world and would torment all humans and creatures they came across. The dragon would breathe a dark sort of cloudy flame that when inhaled by any would cause them to see horrific, nightmarish illusions, so realistic that the victim could physically feel the harm caused to them by this trickery. Many would die from pure terror, and those who survived an assault by this creature were often those who knew of its powers, though even that couldn't guarantee an escape. These creatures, while being a different color, were similar in appearance to their more common counterpart, the Zoro wyvern. They had fur-covered backs and heads, armor-plated arms, and a fox-like snout, making them resemble creatures in the Zburator family, that being species that are blends of wolves and dragons. There is, however, one other significant visual alteration in these creatures. It is said that the hair spawning from an albino Zoro wyvern's neck would twist and writhe around it even on a windless day, as though it were tentacles of an octopus more so than hair. This made the creatures look far more chaotic, and was said to be a clear sign of the haunted, mystical, undead nature of these creatures. I can't say I'd be eager to find one of these Zoro wyvern variations in the wild, though it does intrigue me to learn that there are seemingly far more variations of dragons I'm familiar with throughout the history of my world. Now, in that last episode, I asked people to give me suggestions for variations of Pokemon that I could use in this series. You know, like Alolan Pokemon, Hisuian ones, Galar Pokemon, and the two suggestions that I saw the most were Hisuian Zoroark and Hisuian Goodra. And Goodra was very tempting, but I've gotten so many requests for Zoroark in the past and have never used it on the channel that I was just like, okay, I think I gotta go with Zoroark. And when I looked up Hisuian Zoroark, I realized that I'd never actually seen it before, and I really like the Hisuian variation. I mean, Zoroark is really cool looking already, but the Hisuian version, I think, is just that much cooler. Now, anyone that is familiar with Monster Hunter or has just ever seen a Nargacuga from Monster Hunter will probably quickly recognize that I was taking heavy inspiration from that dragon for this dragon. I really love how the Nargacuga looks and felt like it would be a good fit for this kind of creature, of course, making the head more fox-like. I think the hair ended up being a little bit too wild, and it was kind of competing visually with some of the shoulders and arms and behind it, so I end up darkening a lot of the stuff behind the hair so that we're not getting overwhelmed with visual stimulation and are focusing a little bit more on the head. Probably could have handled that a little bit better, but I'm not really complaining much because overall I'm quite happy with how this turned out. And I hope everyone that suggested Hisuian Zoroark likes how it turned out too. Now, this last species of dragon for today actually has a surprising amount of debate around it for how simple of a dragon it appears to be. Even the name is heavily debated in Beast Chronicler circles, as it seems none have ever seen this creature's full body. I personally have accepted the creature's name as the dugout mole hydra, though I can't confirm that this creature, or creatures, are indeed hydras. These dragons are often seen with either one head or three, though some scattered reports have claimed more than that. The debates around these creatures spawn from the fact that all anyone has ever seen of them is their heads and necks, and when three heads dig up from the ground near one another, they are never seen as attached. Since the necks never draw far enough out of the earth to reveal a torso connecting all three heads, some have suggested that these are not indeed hydras capable of growing more heads, but are simply a grouping of individual members of the same species traversing together. There are also arguments within the circles of those who do believe them to be hydras as to what the body of these creatures looks like and how large it is at full scale. I personally imagine it to have a fairly proportional, simple, drake-like body with no wings, but some swear up and down that these creatures actually have massive muscular bodies with huge wings, and if they did indeed dig fully up out of the earth, they'd be some of the most powerful creatures around. Though, I think it's entirely possible people who make that claim are simply trying to get a rise out of their fellow Beast Chroniclers. Beyond the debates that rage around this creature's body, they are fairly simple dragons. Their longest neck can often stretch 10 feet out of the ground, they have thick, durable hides to protect them from being cut up by the rocks that they dig through, and they're generally only hostile when provoked. Truly, these creatures would hold little interest for most if it weren't for the hotly debated mysteries revolving around their true form. Now, I don't actually think anyone suggested Dugtrio, but for this episode, because I knew I had to turn it around in 2 days, but I still wanted to get 4 drawings in, I knew one of the drawings was going to have to be a very simple Pokemon that I could turn into a fairly simple dragon as well. So when I was flipping through my book of Pokemon trying to come up with who to use, and I flipped to Dugtrio, I just kind of started cracking up about the idea of Dugtrio as a 3-headed hydra digging up out of the ground. It'd be a simple design, but then I could also work into the lore, the memes that I've seen of Dugtrio where people draw it and then its body under the earth as this massive jacked dude. I just thought that was a really funny idea and would give me some easy writing fuel for this, so I decided to work it in. Not really a ton to say about this one. The design feels like a pretty obvious choice to me in terms of translating it into a dragon. Messed around with the eyes for a while to get them the right level of cuteness that I was going for, and I hope you all like it as the simple finale for this episode. Let's take a look.
Well, I think Pokemon as Dragons has got to be a good competitor now for SCPs as Dragons as the best set of dragon videos on this channel. I'm certainly open to doing more of these, or doing what lots of people have been suggesting in the comments, which is Pokemon as folklore creatures, because I think they would fit really well into that series, but I'm open to whatever. Also, more Pokemon as SCPs. So many things I could do with Pokemon. Leave me all your suggestions in the comments. And of course, if you're new to the channel and you want more stuff like this, I'll link the whole playlist of all my dragon episodes. Turned tons of things into dragons over the last few years. But besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note. And the thought I want to leave people with today is a quote from Tom B.U. Decide how the person you want to be would act, then act that way, even when it's really hard. I hope that's inspiring to someone out there. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Monday. As promised, a hell of a boss episode. Goodbye.